My attempt in today's presentation is to point out the highlights on what we can do as teachers to encourage students to become self-directed learners. Let's start with the definition of self-directed learner from Paul Robert Pintrich. Pintrich defined self-regulated learning as an active, constructive process whereby learners set goals for their learning and then attempt to monitor, regulate, and control their cognitive, motivation, and behavior, guided and constrained by their goals and the contextual features of the environment. These self-regulatory activities can mediate the relationships between individuals and the context and their overall achievement. A big part of understanding how to self-regulate is to understand how we organize knowledge, truly attempting to understand how we learn. Really, when we look back on self-directed learners, we're trying to figure out what motivates the students. We've all had that A student who does all the work, has walked up to you after that first test, which they probably bombed, and said, I've always received an A in this class, or this in math or English, whatever it is. If it was English, they would say, I've always received an A in English, and I really thought I was a good writer, but I just don't seem to do well in this test. Or, what about those many students who they do every assignment, they do everything that you ask of them in class and in homework, they stay focused, they pay attention, they study for weeks, getting ready for the midterm or whatever exam, and then they bomb it. You work with them, or they talk about how they're going to study more the next time, and they bomb it again. What do we do with those students? Self-directive learners are in control of their own learning. It's not just about finishing the assignment or doing what the teacher assigned them or asked of them. It's about learning. They know how, and they understand how to learn. They can adapt and adjust to the environment, to different teachers and different teacher styles. They can adapt to the task at hand. They're flexible. They can repeat success in new and unfamiliar situations. They also have the ability to objectively and reliably evaluate the quality of their own work. The point of understanding a self-directed learner is that they've got to have these skills to move on past the educational settings. When they go to work, they need to be able to do their job not just because their boss says so, but because that's what will lead to success or lead to completion. It goes beyond work ethic. It's about attitude, and that attitude matters, and that why I'm doing something is just as important. Part of developing self-directed learners is understanding the role of the teacher and the student, empowerment of the student, and getting them to understand that intelligence isn't just producing things, but it's also about the steps along the way. And really, we're going to focus on motivation. A self-directed learner understands the motivation on why they're doing something. Again, motivation is a huge part of it, and it's really the teacher's responsibility to encourage that motivation by showing the importance of the work, the importance of the learning that is going on. The chart on the slide right now comes from the book How Learning Works, and it just sets up that if you put value and expectations to the work, that will motivate them, the student, and get them to focus on the goals ahead of them, and that's where the learning will come from and the performance will come from. The book How Learning Works goes on to say that to become self-directed learners, there are 5 metacognitive maneuvers that students must learn. And let's look at a chart that will explain those. To become self-directed learners, learners must learn to assess the demands of the task, evaluate their own knowledge and skill, plan an appropriate and fitting approach, monitor their progress, and finally adjust their strategies as needed. Let's go ahead and take a look at each of those steps a little bit more deeper. Okay, strategy number 1, assessing the task at hand. As a teacher, how can you encourage this? You can provide more details in your directions, very clear, probably more than you think you should be providing. You can show examples, past students who have succeeded and possibly missed the expectations of this assignment. You can also provide clear criteria and expectations. Even if you have a rubric ready, providing that is going to allow them to really understand what you want. Just a simple example of, I want you to bring a 3-ring binder in tomorrow. Showing them the 3-ring binder and not the peachy 2-pocket binder. Giving them the visual as well as the audio. All those extra details can help them reach their task. Strategy number 2, helping them evaluate their own strengths and weaknesses. The biggest step here is giving early performance-based assessments. This can be hard as a teacher. You've got 120 students and you're trying to get everything back between all the class periods, and it's easy to kind of put off the grading. But if you really want them to take ownership for what they're doing, you've got to give them early performance-based assessments. You've got to return stuff to them right away. Also allow them to self-assess early. Are they doing what they should be doing, and what could they be doing better? Helping them plan an appropriate approach is the next strategy, and ways to do this is to give them a timetable and a possible plan, ways that they could best complete each of the tasks needed to complete the overall assignment. But part of this, if you really want them to take responsibility, is that you need to encourage or even assign that they create their own plan, something that they will follow and that you will grade them on. Make planning part of that overall assignment. Teach them how to take the steps along the way. As a teacher, modeling is a huge part of encouraging them to think about intelligence and think about learning the metacognitive side of things. You should explain maybe how you would approach an assignment, how somebody else would approach it, because obviously with different learning styles, you don't want to just only sell your approach. You should also be able to share your own successes and your own failures in school and get them to understand the process of learning. And finally, reflecting on and adjusting your own approach. As a teacher, you can provide activities that require students to reflect on their performance right away as they turn it in, journal about the whole process and what they would have done better and what they did really well. You can prompt students to analyze the effectiveness of a study performance strategy, what strategies they used, did it work well, did it not work well, and then along the way you can just provide multiple strategies for them. What steps could they take, and give them lots of options so they have lots to choose from. A final note about this process is it doesn't have to be congruent. It doesn't have to go in order. They don't always have to start with assess and end with reflect. A real self-directive learner will bounce in and out of this, will start in different places because they understand their own strategies in their own mind, and they'll understand that this is the goal and I'm going to get to that goal, but they're going to get their own process to get there. There's not just one way. So hopefully we can understand how to apply these 5 steps into our students and get them to motivate themselves into finishing the task. for the learning opportunity, not just for the grade.